Welcome to another installment of some exercises demonstrated by yours truly, Coach Gary. Single arm reverse plank options. These are helping us to become more stable from a single point with our arms. So as we do that, our body is going to want to rotate and we're going to keep it neutral. So we can do these from a post or from a single ring. We could use two rings, but we might as well just use one. So for a single arm reverse plank, I'm going to step out fairly wide with my stance, allow myself to lean back. I'm looking for a good alignment, heel out through the top of the head, so avoiding arching away or allowing myself to bend. From here, I'm going to just release one hand. I can keep that hand right close. I can take it out to the side for a little more difficulty. I can keep it in front. Put it down, I can put it up. I can do whatever I want with this arm, but I'm going to avoid allowing that shoulder to pull back. I'm also going to avoid kind of pulling it forward to counter that. I'm trying to have no movement happen in my core whatsoever as I release one hand. So here's a single arm plank. To make this more difficult, I can walk my feet in. At some point, it feels better to me to have my toes up. So there's a limit to how far you can take this potentially before your heels start to slip out. You could potentially take it to a full inverted situation where you're underneath. You might have to adjust the height of the ring for that. So again, a little bit harder with your feet closer in, releasing, coming back, switching sides as you like. Again, we could do this from a post, same idea, leaning back, releasing one side, and avoiding that rotation. Basically, that's also the setup for our single arm ring row. Same setup here, releasing one hand. In this case, I might row on both sides at the same time. So I'm going to do a mirror, even though this hand is loose. I'm still going to go through the row. I could always just hold it here. Feels better to me to do it alongside. And I'm going to avoid kind of pulling up to the shoulders or doing any sort of movement through the core for that. A post could feel nice on this. Again, wide-ish stance, and then just a single arm pulling myself up. I can walk my feet past the post to make this a little more difficult. And I'm going to want to hold low on my post so that my hand doesn't come up to my shoulder, but rather I'm pulling elbow down towards the bottom of the ribs. Reverse fly using a band and a post. So sometimes we'll do like a banded pull apart. That's great. But if we use a post, then we can get a little bit more of the sensation of pulling back to activate. So I don't have to be very far away from my post. I also don't need a very heavy band to really activate my upper back. I could stagger my stance here a little bit to give me a little bit more stability forward and back. But mostly just trying to stand up nice and tall, really braced, and really squeezing the shoulder blades together, avoiding any sort of shoulder coming up or forward. Banded boat pullover. So here I have my band fairly low. I'm getting down on the floor. I'm bracing first, then lifting shoulder blades up a little bit. I can take legs out for my banded pullover. I can also leave feet on the floor and just have a lot of bracing energy as I pull that band straight arm towards my hips and back to overhead. So boat, half boat, feet on the floor, boat. Either way, I'm staying very, very strong in my brace and hollow through that whole movement. Banded Y with arch. So this band is very small and very tight. Something like that could work. We could also use the mini bands, which are a little more forgiving. We could also use a doubled up band. We want something that's going to allow us to get our arms into that Y-like shape with some resistance. So this is about perfect for me. There are other options around. I'm bringing my arms overhead into that Y. I'm stretching out very long. So some people might like to do this with feet up. I like to do it with feet down, so big toes touching, pressed into the floor. And I'm thinking about stretching out long with my head as I lift my arms and head slightly. Stretch long. So it does not need to be a gigantic movement. The idea is that we're lengthening, we're staying somewhat braced, but then we are lifting through the entire back as we lengthen. So it shouldn't feel like a back crunch necessarily. Lots of activation in the upper back to accomplish that movement. IYT, same thing, we're stretched out very long through the top of the head. I again like to have my feet together, pressed into the floor. Full length. For an I, holding for a beat at the top, I like to have my chin tucked in my chest, so back of the neck feels flat versus like a big craning up, so that sensation of stretching long. I, arms out a little bit wider. Y, arms straight up to the side, same thing. T. The goal is not to do a ton of those, but to stretch out long and hold at the top for a beat on each of them. Bench, vault. We have our bench here. We're going to vault over our bench. So kind of the middle of the road variation is hands on the bench, hopping from one side to the other. We can do sort of a staggered hop over. That works. We can also do this off the end of the bench so that we are in no danger of hitting the bench. So I can go low, but I can still go high. To clear the bench or to get higher, we are doing a bit of a butt kicker at the top. So the hips don't have to come up super duper high. If we did that little butt kicker, makes it a little easier. So people can also do this where we're still having some pressure on the hands and arms and shoulders, and step back and forth. So that is another option. Again, over the bench or not over the bench. We can also, to take it up a level, put our hands on the ground and hop over the bench. So hands on the ground, hopping over the bench, singles, or stringing those together are both great options. Pinch, plate, hold, or carry. So I can hold my plate like this with the lip, but for a pinch plate, we want to be on a flat surface. So we don't want to use a lip. We want to have a flat surface that we're holding, just like so. So no lip to curl our fingers around. We can do just a hold here, or we could carry this. Switching sides as needed. This is a 10-pound plate. Still pretty challenging. Something heavier would be a lot more challenging. Blob hold. Sometimes we'll call this a crush grip hold. When we take it like this, I've heard it called a blob hold. You could call it something else. So again, I could wrap my fingers around the edge of this so I'd have a lip to hang on to. We're thinking about just fingers on a vertical surface here. So it's really getting into some grip stuff. And again, we could hold for a certain amount of time, or we could do a carry, or we walk with this. And there you go. Blob hold. Do it. It's so good for your little fingies.